All right, this is putting it all together now. So, like I said, I'll do another video to kind of finish out the other side here of the arm, and you know that some of you have clavicles, some of you don't. But this is going to kind of assume that we've gotten to that part. I want to just have um, the final setup part done for you guys, and then I'll work on the left side and the clavicle, or right side and clavicles. And you know, I haven't really actually done the right side of the leg yet. I have one just sort of over here so we can connect it, and I'll do a more detailed one for that too. So the first thing is that we need to make the knee and the elbow controls. Just select the copy curve and duplicate it. Just going to call that elbow CNTL. Snap it up on the elbow. Duplicate it. Call this one RT. Oh, and I'm going to snap that one onto the other elbow. Like I said in the class, the position here isn't really that critical. I mean, I'm just trying to get them equal. Then I usually kind of just pull them back somewhere over here. In the animations, these are going to move all over the place, so their position isn't really that critical. Knees are a little bit more important. So I'm going to make the knees now. I'm just going to copy this curve, or duplicate rather, I should say. Command D. Call this knee CTL. Snap this onto the knee joint. It's a good place because that's kind of where the twist of the IK handle is going to be. Snapping them both on there. So I've got them selected. These you want to just pull forward, and you want a fair amount of distance because when you sometimes you bend over or something, you can run into them. So a little distance I think is good. It's going to rename this one to RT. It's going to be right knee, and then I've got my right elbow and my elbow control. So I'm going to connect things, so always want to do modify freeze transformations on all of those. Now the next process is going to be a constraint. It's going to be a pull vector. The order is important, how you select these. So it's always going to be the control curve first and then the IK handle after. So this is all going to be control curves are connecting to IK handles. So control curve, shift select my, this is my elbow to my right arm, IK, constrain, pull vector. And you see this little line kind of pop there from the IK handle to the curve. I moved a little bit there. So again, the curve first, this is the right elbow, now the right IK, constrain, pull vector. Knee, this is actually the ankle IK here, constrain, pull vector. And then the knee, IK, constrain, pull vector. And these just rotate the knees back and forth. So, or you know, it sounds like a rotation. You know, these are actually moves. So it's a pointing at. That's how that works. Okay. So our last control is the all control, so I'm going to select the copy curve and duplicate, Command D, or edit duplicate. I'm going to call this all CNTL. I usually just kind of snap that into the grid. I'm holding P. Snap that onto the grid at the origin. It's not super critical that it's on the origin, but you know, it's nice to have it centered. I usually look at this from the right view and make it really big from the center. Oops. Make it big from the center. Squash it down. And then move it down towards the feet. And what I like to do is make sure that it's easy to make a selection of the foot. Like, so sometimes if you make this exactly the same size as the foot, it can be a real pain in the neck. So something along those lines. Right there, in terms of position. And spacebar, perspective view, so you can see it now. As long as it's outside the character, it's large. Well, this is a big controller. It's going to hold everything inside of it. This is one of the most important ones that you'd ever want to freeze transformations on. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but this one really does screw things up pretty bad. So I'm going to freeze transformations on the Alt control. And before we connect everything, we've got a lot of our joints aren't necessarily connected to anything, so we have separate, you know, pelvis and hips, and the shoulders are not connected, and the clavicles are just sort of sitting off to the side. So let's do the parenting. So when we're parenting for the 160 class, if you're looking at this from that angle, you don't have a clavicle joint, you just have a shoulder joint. And if that's the case, then you're just doing shoulder joint to chest joint, or well, not chest joint, but the spine joint over here. And again, you know, that's spine 4 for me. It depended on how many you put there. It wasn't specifically however many. The main point is that when you rotate the top of your spine, you're going to want the shoulders to update with that. So, you know, somewhere below the neck is going to be important. You wouldn't want to go right to the neck, because then the neck's going to rotate it. So you do something along these lines. This looks good to me in this range, and you'll get kind of a downward slant. And that's P for parent, or edit parent. And again, for the this is the 160 class, people that don't actually have a clavicle, or maybe there's someone in the 161 that doesn't have a clavicle either, and they just don't want one. And that would be the setup for you guys. For the 161 class, or anyone that does actually have a clavicle control, we do the shoulder joint first, then we do the clavicle, and then P for parent. Then do this other side, shoulder, clavicle, P for parent. Then I do the clavicle to this spine joint 4, P for parent, clavicle, P for parent. So you can do these more than one at a time too. So like I could have done that up there as well, but if I do the hip, shift select the hip, and then last selection is the pelvis joint, and then P for parent, you can see that it actually does them both over at once. So you can, if you know what you're doing there, you can get that all in one shot. So now you can see that it's getting a little simpler over here. So as I'm putting everything together, I'm looking at the outliner, and you can see how, you know, as you kind of combine things, this gets more manageable. So the order I'm doing it in, I think it's a pretty good order. You can do it in other orders, of course. So let's the parent the joints. So now we're going to look for anything that really isn't going to go specifically with the all control, but we have made extra pieces. So the spine IK, spine curve, the arm IK, and the right arm IK. All 4 of these objects, they're necessary, but nothing's actually using them. They're not going to be put in with anything else. They're sort of separate but necessary. I'm just going to select those 4 objects and group them. So Command G for group or edit group. And I just call that rig, stuff, or maybe better to call it IKs. You could say curves. IK. Like that. I think I called it rig parts before. You can call it a lot of different things, but essentially that's what's in there. There's a I think I didn't put a curve. Put an R in there. Curves IK. So basically there's a curve, it's only one in there, but whatever. So that makes a little group. Now we can look here, there's not a real order to how anything is here. Sometimes what I like to do is just kind of group things together, like here's my right hand and my hand. So I'm just middle mouse, just dragging these around to make sense. Here's the elbow, it's kind of related to the hand. Here's the right elbow. And I'm just kind of doing top is going to be left side, bottom's going to be right. And it just starts to kind of, you can see how it starts to lay itself out a little bit, and you can start to see what things are. So up here is foot. Maybe actually might be better to bring the foot down here under the right foot, above it rather, right? So here's my clavicle group, kind of with my elbows, with my hands, my neck, my pelvis, all those are together. And then I got my feet and my knees. And the last one's the all control. So I'm just kind of organizing the look here of things and just trying to make sense of things. And I'm making a point of organizing here before I actually connect everything, because I find it easier to do this when you actually kind of first sort of just try to make sense of everything you're looking at, and trying just to put things that are sort of related to each other together. That way you can kind of see everything and organize yourself before you actually start putting everything inside of everything. So now basically the knees actually are going to be parented with their respective feet. So the knee control goes to the foot control, and the right knee will just go inside of the right foot control. Again, you can see it's just getting smaller and smaller, more manageable. Okay, just one last time, just want to verify that I did do the freeze transformations. And now I can take all of the controls, including these hand groups. All of these controls are going to now move into the all control. I can move them all at once, or I can move them one at a time, or a couple at a time. It doesn't really matter how you go about it. I'm going to select all of these, so not including the joints, not including Spider-Man or the copy curve. It's just kind of sitting there, nor are we including the curve IKs. I'm just going to, it doesn't matter where I start here, I'm just going to middle mouse and drag that onto all control, and now all of those objects are sitting inside of all control. So this is kind of nice because it lets me grab the all control, and if I now move my all control around, you can see that the rig's going to move along with me, and it's going to work out the way we'd expect. Okay, so then we can move the character around and do things. So we're really close to getting this together. So let's look at my notes here. So the next step is that if we try to scale this, and this could come to pass that you would want to scale this, you can see that the hand, things kind of, they scale, like the curves are scaling, but the joints are not. They're actually staying the same size. So they're it's kind of like getting spread eagled out. And so what we need to do is we need to tell the joints to take the scale of the all control into account. If you look at the pelvis joint, there's a lot going on with it. So what's recommended is to group the pelvis joint to itself. So I'm just going to select the pelvis joint and say Command G for group, and just call it skeleton group. So now you just have a clean group that's outside of all that. And there really is an awful lot of stuff inside of there, right? Especially when you take into account all of the fingers, and sort of astonishing that you made all that. So now basically we're going to do the parenting here. This is an actual, or not parenting, but a constraint. This is a scale constraint. So we've almost used every single one of these except for the aim, which we'll use later for the eye. So it's kind of cool using almost every one of them. So the order of selection is important. So first it's going to be the all control. Then you're going to command select the skeleton group, or you could do shift select there, of course. Then we're going to go constrain. Here's the scale. Maintain offset as the usual add. And so now when we select our all control, and if we do a scale from the center, you can see that now the skeleton's matching everything. And this is important because if you come into a space that's small or large, you can match your character to whatever space you're in. So that's an important quality to the rig. The other things are really actually just going to stay outside here. They're not really, well, the copy curve, of course, because that's just a sitting curve out there. And I like to leave a curve out for different reasons. But if I want to add a new control somewhere, it's always nice just to have a curve sitting there to throw in there. Once I really start animating something or whatever, I probably get rid of it. But I like to kind of leave them hanging around because I often find myself wanting one for some reason or another. The all control is going to be here, and that's going to be a pretty big deal for us. Really, the only thing left for us is to connect the rig to the joints to the character. But before we do that, there's one last thing, and that's locking out curves or controls that locking out attributes that we're not going to have the animator work with. So there are a fair few of them that are doing the exact same thing. So I'm going to try and just be efficient about my selections and just do all the ones that are the same. You can always do these one at a time, but a little faster if you do them together. So in order, I'm going to start with just the elbows and the knees. These all have the same options locked. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, these will only ever translate. So rotates and scales aren't going to do anything. Pretty much always going to be locking scale or visibility, but sometimes we'll be doing more or less. So in this case, these are only ever going to translate. So I'm going to lock out all the rotates, scales, and visibility. So the way I'm doing this is I'm just clicking on the words and then dragging down and letting go. You could also click on a word and hold shift and then select all the words. Again, I'm doing by word here, not by the numbers. I'm going to right click, and there's lock selected. Now to be cleaner, you could actually do lock and hide selected, but for our classes, let's not do that because we want to know that they actually were there, but they are locked. And plus, if we find any problems, it's a little easier just to unlock and work with them. But once you really had your rig running and really tight, I would lock and hide anything that you didn't want an animator to work with. Okay, so the next one is the feet or the foot controls. I'm going to shift in the hand controls, the spine controls, the back control, and the pelvis control. All of these have the same qualities. They're all going to want to do the same thing. It looks like I have the knee controls selected, but remember they're parented in there. So they aren't actually selected, but it does look as though they were selected. So just watch out for that. So these all, I want them to rotate. I want them also to translate. They're all gonna, I want to use those types of attributes. So I know I don't actually want to have scale or visibility. So these are the minimum ones. I'm just gonna lock selected. And then all that's really left is the neck, or the head rather, and the neck. And then if you are doing the clavicles, the clavicles are also the same. So these ones, really important, just notice all of these have those point constraints that we created. So these especially have to be locked. Really important. Yeah, really important. These all really only rotate. So I can click and drag over the translates, and I can actually command and drag over the scales and the visibility and do all those at once. And again, lock selected. So that does all my locks. So now when an animator comes to any one of these curves and say they want to move it, you'll see that the move tool actually goes gray and you can't actually move it. And if you go to your rotate, you can then move it. But if you go into your scale again, you get these grays, so you can't do a scale here. Really nice. Also good for the graph editor too, so that when you're animating, you're only looking at control or attributes that you're actually working with, and not setting keyframes on a bunch of junk you're not working with. So kind of nice. Last step is just connecting the skin to the joints. So first we're going to select the pelvis joint. So not the pelvis control, because a lot of people do that, but watch out for that. Pelvis joint. Shift select the body, or Spider-Man in this case, right? And then we're going to go to skin, bind skin. Now it's real important once you start working, really super common for people to just move right in and start doing stuff. Kind of bummer, because you can actually break a lot of things. So what I would suggest just before you get too far into it is just do a save scene as. Let's say I'm on a 6, so I'll call this 7. And then what I usually tell people to do, and I think it's really helpful, is actually just do one more save scene as, and call this one, this one's actually new. This is going to be a new save. And instead of rig, I actually call this one pose. I don't know if it's the best name, but again, just that's what we call it in the class, so staying with those names. So now this pose one is, it's the same thing as what the last rig is, right? But I can make mistakes, I can have problems, I can always open up the other one, and I find that really helpful, because what people tend to do is they've been rigging for so long, they'll do something like they'll grab an IK handle and they'll move their arm, and everything's fine, but that's not how we move our arm. You're supposed to actually grab the hand and do that, right? And so that's one of the things that we want to watch out for. I don't know why that twisted. I'm not surprised I've been going so crazy on this thing. So just watch out for that when you're doing that. Lastly, what I would suggest that you guys look into would be that the settings up at the top, that turning off everything but that curve right there. And there's a couple here you actually probably don't need to turn off because there's nothing there. But especially, you got this one here is your geometry joints and IK handles, and you really want to just get curves. And this is nice because then when you can do a marquee selection, and you'll just get only, you could see before it's been kind of hard to make selections because you get things that you don't want. And I can just now do drags over things, or a little easier to work with in terms of animating and stuff. Okay, so I think you guys are ready to pose and do some animation. I'm going to turn this off and see you later.